Hey adventurers, so today is the 25th of March, which is considered Tolkien Reading Day. This is a day where you're supposed to read and enjoy Tolkien. Every year I don't remember who it is, the Tolkien Society maybe, puts out a theme for that specific year's Tolkien Reading Day, and this year's theme is Hope and Courage. So today my goal is to talk a little bit about why I believe that Frodo embodies both of these attributes of both hope and courage. My goal is kind of to show that Frodo is actually just as much of a hero to the Lord of the Rings as Sam is. While yes, I agree that Sam is very much a hero, Frodo is as much, if not more so. So that's kind of my goal today, is to go through kind of the events of the Lord of the Rings, specifically where Frodo was the one who made the journey happen and made it work. So of course, we start at the beginning of his tale here. When we first meet Frodo, it is on Bilbo's birthday. We know this history of these stories, so I'm not going to really go too deep into it. The first part that really shows Frodo being the hero is when he chooses to take the ring to Rivendell. He realizes that he has to do this. He realizes, okay, I can't let other people know what I'm doing, especially if the Nazgul or the Ringwraiths are after me, which he doesn't know at this time, but he knows something bad is going to happen. So his goal is to get the ring away from the Shire. That's his goal. Right away he moves out of Hobbiton and goes to Buckland, where he is supposedly going to be living from now on. But instead of living there, he keeps going. He goes into the Old Forest. They deals with so much stuff going through the Old Forest. They run in with the Nazgul, or the Black Riders as they're called at this point. They manage to avoid getting caught by them. And for this first part of their journey, it's really just fear that's driving him on. Not really a desire to be the hero, but he's still courageous enough to take that step and to go. So there's lots of events that happen, lots of things that don't really specifically affect this aspect of his journey as a hero. But he does, of course, he meets Tom Bombadil. He goes through that portion of the story. Like I mentioned, his first step in being this hero is choosing to take the ring to Rivendell. So, as he's going, he then gets stuck in the Barrow Downs with the other three hobbits, Sam, Pippin, and Merry. And they're stuck there. They're not going to survive. At this point in the story, we see a side of Frodo that is very much in this courage aspect. But the courage that had been awakened in him was now too strong. He could not leave his friends so easily. He wavered, groping in his pocket, and then fought with himself again. And as he did so, the arm crept nearer. Suddenly, resolve hardened in him, and he seized a short sword that lay beside him, and kneeling, he stooped low over the bodies of his companions. With what strength he had, he hewed at the crawling arm near the wrist, and the hand broke off. But at the same moment, the sword splintered up to the hilt, and there was a shriek, and the light vanished. In the dark, there was a snarling noise. So that's when they're stuck in the Barrow Downs, and Frodo is the only one that's conscious. He's the only one that's awake. He wakes up, he grabs the sword, and he slashes at the arm that's reaching for the hobbits. This shows his courage, that he's terrified here, but it shows his courage. He then goes on to remember that Tom Bombadil told him to sing this song, and so he sings the song, and Tom Bombadil comes and saves him. So that is a major point to his being a hero. Then once they reach Bree, Frodo sees Strider sitting in the corner and thinks to himself that this guy is kind of weird, he's kind of scary looking, but there's something about him that I trust. And so he wants to go over and talk to him. When he accidentally puts the ring on and vanishes in the middle of the inn, he crawls under tables and then pops up right beside Aragorn or Strider. But he trusts Strider for some reason. And then later on, Strider is speaking to them, and Frodo continues to trust him and is about to trust him to lead them to Rivendell. And then he finds the letter. He gets the letter from Gandalf, and he reads it, and then that reinforces that his decision to trust Strider was the right one. So again, we're seeing his courage, and we're seeing that there's more to him than what everybody seems to make of him, because we mostly remember him during his time in Mordor, which I'll get to more of that in a little bit. As they're heading to Rivendell following Strider, they end up on Weathertop, and he puts on the ring, and he gets stabbed by the Witch King. This wound in his shoulder very nearly kills him, and if it weren't for his will to survive, as well as the elven medicine, he would not have survived. He wouldn't even have survived long enough to get to Rivendell so that the elven medicine could help. At the Council of Elrond, everyone else is sitting there thinking, what are we going to do? We know we can't use this. We know somebody's going to have to destroy it, but how are we going to do this? How are we going to get into Mordor to destroy this? And they have all about given up hope. Gandalf knows what he wants to happen, but he will not force this upon him. And Frodo, even though his goal from day one was to get the ring to Rivendell and then be done, and Frodo, in that moment, he chooses to take the ring to Mordor, even though he was expecting his part of the story to be over when they reach Rivendell. Frodo makes the decision. Gandalf asks him, let the ring bearer decide. And Frodo decides that they will try the mines of Moria. While they're in the mines, they run into orcs. They're all fighting, they're all trying to survive, and Frodo gets stabbed by a orc chieftain, and he's hurt really bad. He's bruised, he's damaged by this blow. Even though it doesn't pierce his mithril coat, it's still gonna get hurt when you're stabbed with a spear by that powerful of a creature. They keep going, he pushes on, he is okay. Even though it hurts, he's okay. And then Gandalf dies. Gandalf falls, and Frodo is heartbroken. His guide, his leader, his mentor just fell. There's nothing that he can do at this point, and yet he still pushes on. And that's the whole thing about Frodo, is he keeps pushing on. They come to Lothlorien, and they have the conversations about what the journey is. Frodo meets with Galadriel. They talk. She shows him the vision from the Mirror of Galadriel, and he sees all these things that may come to pass or may not. He doesn't know. They may have already happened, but he sees these visions in the mirror. He sees Mordor amassing an army, and Sauron looks at him. He sees the eye of Sauron, and it terrifies him. And he offers the ring freely to Galadriel, admitting that it is too great for me. But he knows that if Galadriel takes it, it's not going to be good. And that even though he's offering it freely, he probably shouldn't be giving it away. And so when Galadriel doesn't take it, he understands, he knows, he was expecting this almost. And so he continues on. He's forced to continue with this burden that has been laid upon him. As they get to Amon Hen, he is struggling, trying to decide what should he do, should he follow them to Gondor? He thinks that's the wrong decision. He has seen how Boromir's been acting. He is sure that this is the wrong decision. And he continues to struggle with this, and then he goes up on top of Amon Hen and sees all about him, sees visions of the armies amassing, sees of Sauron again, and he decides, okay, the only way that I can do this is to go alone. Aragorn, and I can't take any of the rest of the Fellowship with me. This is where Sam comes in and realizes that Frodo's going to try and leave without me, and that's not going to work. And so, of course, he ends up with Sam, and Sam and him go on alone. As they're traveling through the Emin Muil, they run into Gollum. The whole taming of Gollum scene is very important, but what it shows is Frodo's pity for Gollum. As he says, now that I see him, I do pity him. And that's an important line because it shows the type of character that Frodo is. He doesn't want to kill, and he sees how wretched of a creature this is, how weak, how pitiful Gollum is, and he knows that he can't kill this creature just to kill it. He can't kill it just to keep it off their trail. That's not a good enough reason. And so he lets Gollum live. He has a desire to help Gollum, even if he knows exactly who and what Gollum is, and he's sure that Gollum will betray them, but he also knows that the oath that Gollum swore on the ring is a binding oath and that it will hold Gollum to it. So he's going to trust that Gollum will stay in line. Gollum leads them through the dead marshes. He falls into the dead marshes and almost dies, but he gets back up and he keeps going on. They arrive at the Black Gate. He is about ready to go into the Black Gate. Gollum says, no, you can't do this. You will get caught, and the Precious will get caught. And that's not something that could happen. That's not something Gollum could let happen. Frodo knows that he's right, but he doesn't know of any other way into Mordor. So when Gollum says there's another path, Frodo says, okay, I will trust you. I will allow you to take me on this path. While they're in the land of Ithilien, they meet up with Faramir, and the whole thing with Faramir and Faramir wanting to take the ring, or Faramir rather not wanting to take the ring, but him having to face the fact that he did not leave Boromir on good terms because Boromir tried to steal the ring. As they got to know Faramir a little bit better, he came to trust Faramir as much as he could. He obviously couldn't tell them everything that he was doing, but he trusted him as much as he possibly could. As they're going more on their travels, Frodo is coming to this realization that this is his burden to bear alone. Sam can never help. Sam can't help carry the burden itself, carry the ring. But that doesn't stop Frodo from going on. It's heavy, it's hard for him to bear, but he has to do it anyways. Then he is captured. He's poisoned by Shelob and then captured by the orcs of Cirith Ungol. And he's stripped of everything. He's tortured and starved. When Sam comes up and gets him back up and moving and then returns the ring to him, Frodo realizes that he still has to go on. As long as the ring is still in their possession, they have to go on. As they're going through Mordor, it's a harsh environment. It's horrible. It's hard to deal with. There's no water, or at least there's no clean water. They're running out of food. They're tired. They're hungry. They can't sleep. It's harsh terrain. Everything is going against them, and they press on and they press on. Frodo eventually loses all strength and collapses. He cannot physically go on anymore. That's where Sam comes in and picks him up and carries him. Even though Sam can't carry the ring, he can carry Frodo. And so he carries Frodo. Frodo, at this point, has long since accepted the fact that he is going to die. There's no coming back from this. This is a one-way trip. They're going to Mount Doom. They're going to destroy the ring if they even make it that far, but there is no coming back. They won't have enough food. They won't have any water. There's nothing. There's no chance, but he still presses on. They get to where they're nearing the cracks of Doom, and they run into Smeagol, or run into Gollum again. At this point, Sam is trying to deal with Gollum, so Frodo goes. He takes off and runs and makes it into Mount Doom and is holding the ring out over the lava, over the volcano, but he cannot release it. This is where he fails. He tries his hardest, and it didn't matter. He failed. He couldn't destroy the ring. And then Gollum comes in, bites off his ring, bites off his finger, and steals the ring, and then falls into the lava. So we now have Frodo, who has a wound in his shoulder that is mostly healed. He's been bruised by the orc chieftain. He's watched Gandalf die. He's just recently learned that Boromir died. He was poisoned by Shelob. He was starved and tortured by the orcs. And now he loses his finger on top of all of that. He's just been beaten down and beaten down and beaten down, but it never stopped him. He kept going. With all of this being on top of the fact that he will never return. He won't be able to go home. He's going to die. He knows it, and he's accepted it. He's, okay, I still have a duty to do. This is the whole courage of Frodo. We see that even though he ultimately fails to throw in the ring, his will to go on and to complete his quest, even after trial after trial, this is what makes him the hero of the story just as much as Sam. His will is nigh unbreakable, even though his body cannot take it. He physically cannot go on, but his will to complete the task, that's what keeps him going, is he knows he has to do this. He has this strong will. He has this courage to go on in the face of everything else. He knows he's going to fail. He knows he's going to die, but he's going to go on anyways. Of course, the items and the people around him are what contribute to the ultimate success of the mission, Sam specifically, as well as the Phial of Galadriel. These items and these people are central to him making it as far as he does. And then even Gollum, as Gandalf said earlier in the books, he may yet have some part to play. And he did, but Frodo had to get to Orodruin at least, or else it wasn't going to happen. He fails to complete the quest, and yet the quest is still completed. After the quest is fulfilled, he is honored by Aragorn. He is asked by Aragorn specifically, would you allow Frodo to bring the crown to me? and then have Gandalf crown him. But Frodo was the one specifically given the task of bearing the crown. And then they get back to Rivendell, and he's really loving Rivendell. He loves spending time with Bilbo, he loves spending time with the elves. Just the peacefulness and the relaxing nature of Rivendell is so amazing to him, and he just wants to stay. But he realizes that it's time to go home to the Shire. And there's so much more to that he doesn't understand at that point, other than that it's time for him to go home. As they get home, the Shire's in ruins, the Shire's being destroyed. And although he's not up at the top fighting hard for it, he is on that list of hobbits and important people who fought to retake the Shire. He then, every year on the anniversary of Weathertop, when he was stabbed by the Morgul blade, every year after that, he has to deal with the pain of that wound coming back to haunt him every single year, and he deals with that. He also writes down the story of the events of the Lord of the Rings so that others can read it. He relives this period of his life that was horrible, that was hard, that was difficult, that he failed, where he is not the hero. But he writes it down so others can see that story. At the end of the story, before actually he even goes back to the Shire, he has a conversation with Arwen where she gives him her place on the voyage into the West because she's chosen immortal life for herself. And so she gives her place on that ship to Frodo, along with the Evenstar necklace. This was specifically because he was ring bearer, because he, even though it wasn't by his choice and this was a task that was thrust upon him, he was still willing to be that ring bearer. And because of that, he was rewarded. One of his most famous lines is, "I wish the ring had never come to me." And that's the whole thing about it, is he goes on and he struggles and he hurts. This task was a burden on his mind and body that was very hard for him to endure, and yet his will allowed him to. And that right there shows us his courage. We see that he has hope to go on. He knew that he wasn't going to make it back, so his hope lasted him to Mount Doom. That was as far as his hope could sustain him. He couldn't hope for anything beyond arriving at Mount Doom. And so he didn't, but he held on to hope that they would arrive there and that they would destroy the ring and that Middle-earth would be saved. And he had the courage to push forward and to push through and to go on, even though he failed continually. It's interesting to look at his journey through this lens. We don't often think about it because we so much of the time think about how Sam was the hero, how Sam is not honored by anybody in Middle-earth, but everybody on Earth talks about Sam being the real hero. But you have to remember that Sam wouldn't have gone on if it weren't for Frodo. Sam would have given up if he didn't have Frodo that needed looking after. Sam only went because Frodo went. If Frodo hadn't have gone, Sam would never have gone. He wouldn't have taken on that journey of it by himself. And that's an important thing to remember, that even though Sam may have ultimately been the one to get Frodo to Mount Doom, it was Frodo that allowed Sam to get Frodo to Mount Doom, if you understand what I'm saying. So it's important to realize that Frodo is very much the hero of the story, just as much as Sam is. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was very, very fun for me to do. I've had a lot of fun rereading Lord of the Rings this past couple of months and seeing Frodo's journey, seeing who he was. It was a good thing for me to sit down and analyze who he was and why he was the way he was. Please like and comment down below and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have our Instagram link down in the description down below. And we try and post videos every Monday and Thursday. Thanks for watching. Stay around.